Hello, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tanya. I'm joined here with my mum. Introduce yourself.
I'm Martina Inashe. Welcome to the podcast, Speaking Your Truth.
Speaking your truth. And on today's episode, the topic is gonna be healing. Um, he- Mum was literally just showing me her profile picture on WhatsApp. Where is it? It says here. Here also, you don't have to give a sarcastic tone to uplifting messages. Here also, you never have to make anyone else the object of your own frustration. He also, when someone tells you that they love you, you allow yourself to believe them. First of all, where did you find this?
I can't remember where I found it. I think I found it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just resonated with me because I realized that a lot of disharmony that we have in the world is actually associated with hurt or hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us are hurting, but we don't actually understand that we are hurting. And I think if we look at how we react to certain experiences, to certain triggers in life, or things that are going on in our reality, it really does reveal the spaces of where we are heading.
Mm-hmm.
So the objective of looking at life through the veil of a brokenness, or through the veil of hurting, or through the veil of anger, through the veil of frustration, and through the veil of bitterness, you respond with a cynical experience. That's the experience you have is really based on the veil that you're holding before you.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So I think that we need to take time to heal ourselves so that we are able to view our experiences from different perspectives. Because if I've been living under the energy of anger for so long, the veil that I see through, or that I perceive through, will make me see people that make me angry,
Or things that will make you
or
angry.
things that will make me
Yeah.
angry. So I start to define myself based on that veil and how I'm seeing the world through that veil.
Mm-hmm.
So until I heal myself from that frequency, from that energy of anger, I cannot change anything. Yeah. So if I want to change things about how I'm being, I have got cynicism against about anything that I am experiencing, I have to go right to the source of what's causing me to be like this.
Right.
And then if I heal that, then I can change my reality.
Just as they say, your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality.
It is.
So when things aren't, well, the way you view things are based on how you view yourself.
Exactly.
And how things are functioning inside of yourself.
Exactly.
Whether it be your emotion or your psychology.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the understanding to work within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and bring the peace within yourself to shift the outside, because what happens is you will still have that veil or those goggles that you have on of anger or whatever.
Yeah.
And the frustration builds up and you spend all your time trying to work and fix everything externally.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is that you'll be stuck in the same loop. Even if you fix one thing, another thing will pop up that will make you feel the same way.
Yeah.
But the real task is to go inside and deal with whatever issue you have inside of you.
Yeah.
And then your reality will begin to reflect the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most of the time we have problems identifying where our issues are.
Mm-hmm.
As you say, you keep going through the same loop.
Yeah.
Without realizing that you're repeating those patterns. So there's also an important part there that requires some self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because if you realize that, you know what, I'm an angry person, and that's the beginning of your self-awareness, yeah?
Mhm.
And then the steps that you need to take is, how do I then bring myself from this being an angry person into the person that I desire to be? So, who do you desire to be if you don't desire to be an angry person? You no longer want to carry or vibrate from this frequency of anger.
Exactly.
So, who do you really want to be? So, you have got to choose another frequency, because most of the time we just end up saying, I don't want to be angry, but then we don't go beyond, okay, if I don't want to be angry, who do I want to be?
Mhm.
Or how do I want to function in the world? But some of our lives, we have benefited from the emotions that we don't want to be in, right? Because if being angry is making way for you in different ways,
Yeah.
you might actually think, well, it's benefiting me, so what's the point of letting it go? But then in the process of you dealing with people, when you're angry, you don't actually realize the damage that you're causing, and it's actually to yourself and to
To the
those
people
that
around
are
you.
around you, or the people that you come across.
Mhm.
And then, in the end of it all, it becomes too big, it becomes overwhelming, and the things that you were doing thinking you're doing well, eventually you realize, actually, that's not what I want. But it takes a long time to get to that place. That's why we really require for us to learn about ourselves.
Mhm.
We talk about speaking my truth. If I'm speaking my truth from a place of anger, I'm going to be hating other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to give an example of what happened. How I became a bit self-aware about something was been talking about in the last few days. So I keep talking about, me leaving the church and all that. And then I talk about, well, I don't talk bad about the church. But then I realize that when I'm giving other people advice, there's something there someone actually said something to me like, oh, you were really hurt. And then I realized, you know what? Maybe I'm speaking from a place of being hurt.
Mhm.
Even though I'm not desiring to give a message out there that, when I'm desiring to give a message there of clarity that you have to go through these stages of your life. I went through the church because I needed to go through the church. But when I'm giving my message, it's transmitted to other people as if I was hurt.
Right.
So I had to stop for a minute and think, okay, is there some trauma there that is a veil that other people are seeing through my messages?
Mhm.
So that's a bit of self-awareness when you're thinking, oh, maybe there's a bit of trauma. They're sensing the trauma that I'm feeling, but I'm not recognizing. So it also helps to listen to what other people are saying, because then you can identify your own wounds.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because you would have never have known.
I would never have
For you,
known.
you were just projecting it as this is my story.
This is my story. And I didn't feel hurt.
Mhm.
Based on my experience, because I look at it as this was meant to happen. I was meant to go through these things so that I can experience what I experienced.
Right.
But now I'm teaching about it, and people are feeling like I was hurt.
Mhm.
So there is a vibration or a frequency that is coming through to me that is saying to people I was hurt where I was coming from.
Mhm.
So my story is of hurt, but to me it's not of hurt. Does it make sense?
It makes sense.
So now I'm looking at, okay, so how do I change this so that I'm not transmitting hate to the people I'm talking about to, but I'm actually giving them the message of of acceptance of
Mhm.
where we've been, our experiences, whether they are good or they are bad. Does, does that make sense now?
It
Yeah.
makes sense. But do you
Yeah.
feel like you fully accepted it? Or is there
Well,
still some parts that you.
I felt like I'd full accepted it
Yeah.
until the person made that comment. And then I had to stop and think for a while, maybe there's still some trauma within myself, or maybe I accumulated some trauma that I haven't dealt with.
Mhm.
And so, in that process of, okay, is there some trauma that I need to deal with? That's my self awareness. That's work I have to do. So then I can heal myself so that when my message is going out there, I'm not portraying trauma, but I'm just speaking my truth
And it comes out in the frequency of healing
rather than,
hurt.
yeah, yeah, rather than I'm telling my story from a place of being hurt.
Mhm.
Because I wasn't really hurt, but maybe there is something there that I feel that means that I'm hurting at some level that I haven't particularly identified.
Mhm. I can see maybe there was a certain level of disappointment after the whole situation.
There was disappointment in so many ways, but those disappointments led me to work on myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was experiencing things. I see the outlook that I had when I was there was not that I'm here to be saved. It was I'm here to serve and to learn. Yeah. So in the process of serving and learning, I possibly have, oh, of course, there's places where I was hurt. Maybe I was frustrated or disappointed, or expectations that I had that were not met.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the big one, the expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to heal from an expectation that is not being met.
Yeah.
And so you have to identify what expectations did I actually have, so then I can work through and get to a place of being healed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about that, it's a lot of us have kind of experiences like that. There are expectations that were not met, and we got frustrated, we got disappointed, we got hurt, we became bitter and resentful, and all other things that come out from that.
Yeah.
And we actually don't know how to go or rise above it. And that's where healing comes in.
Because it's very easy to let a situation shift your reality and then become the focal point of, oh, I'm this way because this happened to me when I was so. I'm this way because, oh, someone said this to me when I was. It's very easy to slip into that pattern and
The victim pattern.
yeah, and
It's the world. It's the world nature, isn't it? Being victims.
yeah, it's
There's a lot of benefit in that.
yeah. I mean, if you look at it that way, especially in the way society is set up, it's pretty much set up for you to benefit off of being a victim.
Yeah. So then are we willing to let go of being a victim so we can be healed? That's another big question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's so many things we desire, or the things we want, or things we need. But the issue we have is are we willing to give up our victim mentality so we can really get into the place of creating the things we desire?
Mm.
And healing is part of it.
Yeah, it is part of it. But I'm just thinking of it in terms of how we are as a society. Are people willing to do that? Because right now it's very beneficial to play the victim card. And you can bend a lot of other people's reality by playing the victim card.
Yes.
So why would I change being a victim for
healing?
When I can just be a victim and then I can force you to speak how I want you to speak, and the government has to enforce it. And now if you don't speak that way, you're in trouble with the government. Like,
but as we spoke in the previous podcast, it's an individual journey.
of course,
You've got to desire to not be a victim. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of benefits in being that, but there will come a place where the benefits end, and then what? You know.
mm-hmm.
And the way I look at it is that we are in this earth to have some experiences, and some of the experiences are actually part of being a victim. But before you leave the earth, wouldn't you want to get back the power that you have, so that when you come back into another life, you're not going to be playing the same card of victimhood?
It's true.
Because that's how I look at it. Like, okay, I know we talk about, will you go to heaven or you go to hell, and and then that life ends like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to look at life this way: that what, if I come back into another reality in a different life, would I want to experience the same things that I'm experiencing now? Yeah. So I want a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I do the work that I need to do now, so that at the end of it all, when I come back, or if there is that possibility that I'll come back and have a different life, I want to have different experiences. So I really want to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And healing myself is not just about healing me. Because remember, we talked about when I heal me, I create a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to affect how you are going to behave around me. which means that my healing is going to be transferred to you. Yeah.
Mm.
And if you heal, then you create a ripple effect. It's going to be transferred to someone else. So really, my choosing to heal is not a waste of time, because I heal, the generation that comes after me is healed.
Mhm.
Because there's so many things that we carry through in generations.
Yeah.
The patterns that becomes diseases, we become
Traumas.
behaviors, the traumas that are so repeated so many times through the generations, we actually don't know what to do about it. But there has to be someone that makes the choice to heal. So then the generations that come after that person don't have to repeat the trauma.
Mhm.
So that's how I look at it. That's why I think about, if I'm going to have to come back into another life, do I want to carry through the trauma that I've lived in this life? No, I don't. I want to have something different. So I heal from what is there that I can see here and now.
And make that change for the people that come after.
Basically, I might be making that change for me.
I
So you can be selfish about it, like,
mean, you can be both selfish and selfless.
and selfless, yeah. Like, okay, I'm doing this for me so that if I come back into the next life, it's not going to be like this. But then maybe I'm coming back into the next life as a grandchild. So, well, I've done it for me, and I've done it for you, and I've done, so it's kind of like, okay, if you look at it like that, I know they're going to be like, people like, oh, well, there's no next life and all that. What if it's there?
Mhm.
It's just taking this perspective.
Taking the precautions.
Precautions, rather than thinking, oh, okay, when I die, just go to heaven and there's nothing else to worry about. What if then you have to repeat the same pattern and come here after they have an experience?
I think that's very important when setting goals for healing as well,
Mhm.
because there will be times where it's going to be difficult, but having those selfish reasons and those selfless reasons, whatever they may be, can be your motivating factor alongside your discipline in the practice. Because, for example, there might be days where you're not feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this today. I don't want to have to put in the work. And the last time I did this, it made me feel, oh, I don't want to feel like that today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
of course, there are going to be days like that.
Of course,
Yeah.
there's always days like that.
Mhm.
And you will stop and think, oh, maybe your selfish reasons aren't even enough to motivate you to get up and start doing the work. But your
It's
selfless reasons can be just as good a motivating factor as well.
Yeah.
And
But it's okay to be, as I say, to be selfless and selfish.
Mhm.
It's okay when you don't want to do any work.
Of course.
Because if you put too much pressure on you, then you're not going to do much.
And you're not going to do it right.
Yeah, yeah. But then if you give yourself a chance to say, okay, I don't feel like doing anything today. Okay, let me just do what I feel like doing today.
Mhm.
And then tomorrow you pick up and do what you were meant to do. The healing process you were meant to work through still works.
It doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't. But then there's so many ways, there's so many levels of healing. The way I look at it, we've got physical healing, yeah?
Mhm.
We've got mental healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing. And if all these 4 areas are dealt with properly, then we might actually start to live in paradise. We might actually start to live the life that we think we're going to have in heaven.
Yeah.
Because then there's peace, then there's love, then there's kindness, then there's joy, then there's this wholeness of happiness that we can create each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
We are not stuck waiting for someone to make me happy.
It's true.
I'm not stuck waiting for someone to love me, because I love myself enough.
But the important part is knowing that you have to take that into your own hands, because the culture that we have now is pretty much built against healing all of those things, from the foods we eat to the music that we listen to, to the shows that we watch. It's all detrimental mainly to our health, especially when it's consumed in large amounts. In large amounts.
Yeah, but then it's still our choice, isn't it, every day?
Of course.
To choose which part of my life I need healing in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember very well when I was going through the emotional healing. I didn't even realize I was doing emotional healing then, because my journey started with being spiritual. And up to when your spirituality gets to a level where then the emotional part starts to get in the way. Yeah, so you can't move on with your spiritual healing until you've done your emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move from your emotional to your mental. And you can't do much because the mental will come in the way of the emotional and the spiritual. And then the physical has to be there. Because for me to be spiritual and emotional and mental, and mental in balance, all of it to be in balance, I have to be physically healthy to do it.
Yeah.
So then you have to incorporate all the four areas in healing. But the most important thing is when you are hurting emotionally, so it defines how you behave physically, mentally, and spiritually. So I think that's where we need to really seek it. And what do we need to heal first?
Yeah, the emotional, especially with the emotional aspect, it tends to reflect a lot within the physical.
Yeah.
Whether it be sickness or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess they coincide hand in hand. They all reflect and ripple off of each other.
Yeah.
And when one is out of balance, the other one won't be in balance either.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes the awareness to know where the issue is and which level and where you're at as well. Because for me, when I was on my spiritual journey, like you were saying, it got to a point where I reached that what's the word? Like the
pinnacle.
Yeah, like a pinnacle, or let's say pinnacle. And I was pushed into the emotional side, and when I got there, I was just like, damn, I don't want to do this. I don't want to think about all of this stuff, because this happened ages ago, and I'm just living my life now. I don't want to be focused on that. But you realize as things start to surface more and more, you're just like, damn, okay, I didn't realize I was acting like that because this happened when I was so young. I had no idea. So you begin to work through those things, but at the same time, it's very difficult to try and navigate around and figure out, which is the best course of action to do this. How do I reach, or how do I even know when I've healed myself to the point where I can move past?
I think you do know, because I do know, because what I was talking about, when you in the spiritual journey, you get to a certain level, and then the emotional starts to get in the way. It's if you identify your emotions. What is emotion? My biggest emotion that got in the way was anger. And it took quite a while for me to really realize, you know what? This is what is in the way. And why it's in the way is it's asking for me to heal it so I can move forward. Because once I figured out how to heal the anger, I go to a place where, you remember when I started to do Return to Love?
Yeah.
So that's when that whole level of spirituality opened. That, now you are here, now you need to start to learn how to return to love, which meant to me that I was lacking in the process of understanding what love was. So I had to make the journey of returning to love.
Right.
Yeah. So making that journey of returning to love also needed some healing. And that was also the emotional part of it involved in that. But then the emotions just don't stand on their own, because sometimes you work on anger, but then it's not going away. Then you have to start to look at what is it that is connected with this emotion. Then it kicks you into the mental, where now you're thinking about the images that you're caring about, this anger, the stories that are there. And then when you work on those stories, then you find that you're moving on to the next stage.
Yeah.
So you identify where you are and where you're stuck and how you're going round in circles. Yeah. And some of it is very easy to look at. You have to look at the patterns in your family. You look at yourself, and then you look at how you're behaving, how your life is. And then you look at your parents, your father and your mother. You look at them differently, like, okay, how is my father? How is my mother? And then you look at where they came from, your grandparents. What were their patterns? Because for me, I had to identify that anger was a pattern in my family. And I couldn't get rid of it because it was generationally inherited, and all the prayers that I did about it weren't working because it had to be a generational healing. And once I get to the place where I could heal the generation from the anger and heal myself from it, then that set me free from it. Yeah. So it wasn't just my stories and my anger I was dealing it. It was my story, my anger, the inherited story, the inherited emotions, and everything that was around that. So, as I said, when I heal myself, I'm not just healing myself, I'm actually creating a ripple effect. So I didn't just heal myself, I healed you and I healed my generation, which is a good thing.
Very good thing.
Yeah.
I think for me, the emotion that I struggled with the most was maybe frustration.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely a lot of times when I was growing up where I felt like I wasn't listened to or heard.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, because you're the last one.
Yeah, I was the baby. So whether it be anyone in the family actually, but it used to be quite frustrating when I was just I'm speaking my mind and I'm just like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Too young.
Yeah, too young to know. And I'm just like, I'm talking here, guys.
Yeah, I remember those days. I remember them some time ago when you remember when you were trying to give me. I've been praying for something, and all this prayer, and I was really getting frustrated about it. And then you kept coming to me, saying, "Mom, I want to sing a song to you." Do you remember? I think we were about 7 or so. Mom, I need to sing a something. I just kept pushing you away. Like, go away, Tanya. I'm praying. Go away, Tanya. Eventually, I just like, let me just listen to this kid. Just so I can get rid of you.
So I have to deal with.
And actually, the message in the song was the answer to the prayers that I was making. That's when I realized, you know what? If you really pay attention around you, you get the answers to what you are requesting through even children. You can get the message from even just listening to the radio, from someone meeting you in the street and talking to you. And I became
outside.
I became more observant on that.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I had a different experience when I allowed myself to be more observant to that. I went to the shops and I was praying about something, and then I just met this man who just stopped me, and he said, he gave me a verse. He said, I can't remember what it was. He said, ask and it shall be given unto you, but be prepared to receive. And I was like, huh? So I'm asking and I'm not receiving. I think he gave me, I can't remember. It was in Mark, somewhere in Mark. I can't remember the verse. It's been a while now. And from that moment, I realized, you know what? Sometimes we have to remember what we are asking for. Because when the answers come, then you will know that something was trying to give to me what I was asking for, but I was not receiving. And then when I recognized that I was in my own way, or I was blocking myself from receiving, I opened up. And as soon as I opened up, what I needed came my way,
Because you're stuck in the way of receiving it how you imagine it in your head.
Exactly.
Rather than how it should come to you.
Exactly.
So any opportunity that shows up, I'm gonna come receive. You're just like, no, not that. It can't be that.
Yeah. But also that also helped me to identify that there was because that I had to heal myself so that I could allow myself to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because there was a mindset about receiving that I had. And I had to deal with that. Yeah. Because I realized, you know what, I'm asking, but I'm not receptive. Mm-hmm. What is in my way of being receptive? So it's all a journey about healing. I know we get so frustrated, as you rightly say, because we're not receiving what we are asking for. We are not being heard. But then, is it something in you that needs to heal? So then you can be heard. Mm-hmm. Because you can have the narrative that someone is, they don't hear me, they don't this. But in the process of it, it's your own imagination that you're creating a reality where you're not being heard.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It was way time is.
We're about to go over our time limit here, guys. So, if you want a part 2, actually, like the video, comment part 2, and we'll get on to that one. But thank you for tuning in. It was lovely talking about this today. It's quite eye-opening, actually. I hope it was for you too. But yeah, that's all from us. And we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.